The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel's ballroom, where New York's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Jasmine Williams sat quietly at her assigned table, her emerald green dress catching the light as she adjusted her position in her wheelchair. At 27, she possessed a beauty that seemed to glow from within, though most people's eyes never quite made it past the chrome and leather that carried her. She watched the crowd move like a living organism, couples gliding across the dance floor, business deals being struck over champagne, and social climbers desperately seeking their next rung on the ladder. Her fingers traced the rim of her untouched water glass as she tried to make herself smaller, invisible, a skill she'd perfected over the 3 years since the accident that had stolen her ability to walk. "Excuse me," a harsh voice cut through her thoughts. Marcus Chun, a prominent investment banker known for his aggressive tactics and even more aggressive personality, stood before her table with his entourage of equally pompous associates. "You're in my seat." Jasmine looked up, confusion clouding her dark eyes. "I'm sorry, but the event coordinator assigned me to table 12. My name card is right here." She gestured to the elegant calligraphy that spelled out her name. Marcus's face contorted with irritation as he snatched the card, crumpling it in his manicured fist. "I don't care what some minimum wage party planner wrote down. This is the VIP section, and you clearly don't belong here. These tables are for people who actually matter, who contribute to society." Not his eyes swept over her wheelchair with undisguised disdain. "Charity cases who probably got a pity invite." The words hit Jasmine like physical blows, each one finding its mark with surgical precision. She felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as nearby guests began to notice the confrontation, their conversations dying mid-sentence as they turned to watch the spectacle unfold. "Please," Jasmine's voice came out barely above a whisper, her hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. "I don't want any trouble. I'll move to another table." She began to wheel herself backward, but Marcus stepped closer, blocking her path. His cologne was overwhelming, expensive, but applied with the same lack of subtlety that characterized everything about him. "You should have thought about that before trying to infiltrate a space meant for your betters," he sneered, his voice rising to ensure maximum audience participation in Jasmine's humiliation. "What did you think would happen? That you'd roll in here and suddenly be accepted? People like you are reminders of weakness, of failure. You make everyone uncomfortable." Tears began to well in Jasmine's eyes, but she fought them back with every ounce of strength she possessed. She'd faced discrimination before, subtle looks and not-so-subtle whispers, but never anything this blatant, this cruel. "Please don't hurt me," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't walk. I just wanted to support the children's hospital. They helped me after my accident." Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth or humanity. "Oh, how touching. The cripple wants to play philanthropist. Tell me, did you even donate anything? Or are you here for the free food and to make yourself feel important?" His associates chuckled behind him, emboldened by their leader's cruelty. One of them, a woman in a gaudy designer dress, added her own venom to the mix. "Marcus, just have security escort her out. We're wasting time on this nobody." The room had gone eerily quiet now, dozens of eyes fixed on the scene, some filled with sympathy for Jasmine but none brave enough to intervene. This was Marcus Chun, after all, a man who could destroy careers with a single phone call, who held the financial futures of many in the room in his vindictive hands. That's when he appeared. Park Jae-sung had been standing in the shadows near the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey and observing the gala with the detached interest of someone who'd seen too many of these events to be impressed. At 35, he cut an imposing figure in his perfectly tailored black suit, his presence commanding attention even when he tried to blend into the background. He'd noticed Jasmine earlier, had watched her navigate the room with a grace that had nothing to do with physical movement and everything to do with inner strength. Now, watching Marcus Chun tower over her like a schoolyard bully, something shifted in Jae-sung's expression. The carefully maintained mask of indifference cracked, revealing something far more dangerous underneath. He set down his glass with deliberate slowness and began walking toward the confrontation. His footsteps were silent on the marble floor, but something about his approach made people instinctively step aside, creating a clear path. Marcus was still speaking, his voice dripping with condescension. I think it's time you learned your place in the world. Some of us are meant to soar, and others are meant to. He never finished the sentence. To what? Jae-sung's voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried an undertone that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. Marcus spun around, ready to unleash his fury on whoever dared interrupt him, but the words died in his throat when he saw who stood before him. Jae-sung's reputation preceded him like a shadow. While his official business cards read CEO of Park Industries, a legitimate import-export company, everyone in certain circles knew the truth. The Park family controlled most of the Korean underground operations on the East Coast, and Jae-sung had earned his position not through inheritance, but through a combination of brilliant strategy and ruthless efficiency. Mr. Park, Marcus stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist. I didn't know you were attending tonight. Clearly, Jae-sung replied, moving past Marcus as if he were nothing more than furniture. He stopped beside Jasmine's wheelchair, his entire demeanor shifting from predator to protector in an instant. Are you all right? He asked her gently, his voice carrying a warmth that would have shocked anyone who knew him by reputation alone. Jasmine looked up at him through tear-filled eyes, confused by this sudden intervention.
I'm fine.
Thank you, but you don't need to get involved. I was just leaving. She moved to wheel herself away, but Jae-sung placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No, he said firmly but kindly. You're not going anywhere. You belong here as much as anyone else. More than some, I'd say. He turned back to Marcus, and the warmth vanished from his expression like someone had flipped a switch. Mr. Chen, I believe you owe this lady an apology. Marcus's face flushed red, caught between humiliation and fear. I don't think that's necessary. It was just a misunderstanding about seating arrangements. Jae-sung took a step closer to Marcus, close enough that only those nearest could hear his next words. I wasn't asking. You have two choices. You can apologize to Ms. Williams right now, publicly and sincerely, or we can discuss your recent business dealings with the Nakamura Corporation. I'm particularly interested in those offshore accounts you thought were so well hidden. The color drained from Marcus's face. Those accounts contained evidence of embezzlement that would not only end his career but land him in federal prison. How did you, he began, then stopped, realizing the futility of the question. The apology, Mr. Chen. We're all waiting. Jae-sung's tone was almost pleasant, but his eyes held a promise of consequences that made Marcus's hands tremble. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if Marcus Chen, the man who'd never apologized for anything in his life, would bow to the quiet force of Park Jae-sung's will. Marcus turned to Jasmine, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. I apologize, he said through gritted teeth. That's not an apology, Jae-sung said calmly. That's just words. Try again, and this time, remember that you're speaking to a human being who deserves respect. The silence in the ballroom was absolute now, even the waitstaff frozen in place as they witnessed something unprecedented. Marcus Chen, the corporate shark who destroyed countless careers without a second thought, slowly lowered himself to one knee so he was at eye level with Jasmine. Ms. Williams, he began, his voice shaking with suppressed rage and fear. I sincerely apologize for my behavior. It was cruel, uncalled for, and beneath any decent human being. You have every right to be here, and I had no right to speak to you that way. Jasmine stared at him, shocked by the reversal. She could see the insincerity in his eyes, but she also recognized that this public humiliation would hurt him far more than any genuine remorse ever could. Thank you, she said quietly, with more grace than he deserved. Marcus stood quickly, his face burning with shame as whispers began to ripple through the crowd. He turned to leave, but Jae-sung's voice stopped him. Oh, and Mr. Chen? You and your associates will be leaving now. Don't worry about your donation to the Children's Hospital. I'll cover it. Consider it a learning experience about the cost of cruelty. Marcus and his entourage practically fled the ballroom, their departure watched by hundreds of eyes. As soon as they were gone, the atmosphere shifted, conversations resuming with a new topic dominating every discussion. Jae-sung pulled out the chair next to Jasmine and sat down, his presence both comforting and slightly overwhelming. "I'm sorry you had to experience that," he said, his voice returning to its earlier gentleness. No one should ever be made to feel less than human. The crowd had mostly returned to their conversations, though many still cast curious glances at their table. Jasmine found herself studying the man who'd come to her defense, trying to reconcile the dangerous figure who'd terrified Marcus Chun with the gentle soul now sitting beside her. "Why did you help me?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "You don't even know me." Jae-sung was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because I know what it's like to be judged by surface appearances," he said finally. "People see what they expect to see. With me, they see danger, power, someone to fear or manipulate. With you, they see limitation, weakness, someone to pity or dismiss. But neither of those perceptions capture who we really are, do they?" Jasmine felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition of a kindred spirit she hadn't expected to find in this glittering, superficial world. "No," she agreed softly. "They don't," she hesitated, then asked, "Is it true? What they say about you and your family?" Jae-sung's lips curved in a slight smile. "Which part? The legitimate business empire or the other things?" His tone was light, but his eyes held a weight of experience that spoke volumes. "Both, I suppose," Jasmine admitted. "Though I'm more curious about why someone with your reputation would care about a stranger being bullied at a charity gala." He turned to face her fully, and she was struck by the intensity of his gaze. "My grandmother was in a wheelchair for the last 15 years of her life," he said. "She was the strongest person I ever knew. She built our family's foundation with nothing but determination and intelligence. When I saw that man standing over you, trying to make you feel small, all I could think about was how anyone who dared speak to her that way would have learned a very painful lesson about underestimating people." He paused, then added with a dangerous edge to his smile, "though she probably would have handled it herself." She was formidable. Jasmine found herself smiling for the first time that evening. "She sounds amazing." "She was," Jae-sung agreed. "She would have liked you. She always said you could judge a person's character by how they handled cruelty. You faced Marcus Chun with dignity and grace, even when he didn't deserve it. That takes a particular kind of strength." A waiter approached their table hesitantly, clearly nervous about interrupting. "Mr. Park, Ms. Williams, would you like some champagne?" Jae-sung looked at Jasmine questioningly, and she nodded. As the waiter poured, she noticed how his hands shook slightly. This man beside her commanded that kind of fear, yet he'd used that power to defend her. "I should probably warn you," she said as the waiter retreated. "Being seen with me might damage your reputation." "I'm not exactly part of the social elite," Jae-sung laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "Ms. Williams, I run a criminal empire. I think my reputation can survive being seen with a beautiful woman who happens to use a wheelchair." The directness of his statement, both about his business and her beauty, made her blush. "You're very frank," she observed. "It's refreshing, actually. Most people dance around both subjects. Most people waste too much time on pretense," he replied. "Life's too short for that." He raised his champagne glass. "To unexpected encounters and the courage to be ourselves." Jasmine clinked her glass against his, feeling something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not for romance, though there was an undeniable attraction, but for the possibility that she could exist in spaces like this without having to make herself small, without having to apologize for taking up space. "Tell me about yourself," Jae-sung said, settling back in his chair with the air of someone who had nowhere else he'd rather be. "What brings you to a stuffy charity gala on a Friday night?" "The children's hospital saved my life," Jasmine said simply. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. I spent 6 months there, learning to live with paralysis, fighting infections, going through surgery after surgery. The staff became like family. Dr. Peterson, the head of neurology, still checks on me every week. When they invited me to the gala as a former patient, I couldn't say no." She paused, then added with a self-deprecating smile, though I'm starting to think the invitation might have been a clerical error. Given Mr. Chen's reaction, Jae-sung's expression darkened. Marcus Chun is a small man who needs to make others feel smaller to convince himself he matters. His opinion is worth less than nothing. He studied her for a moment, then asked, "What do you do now?" "Besides attending galas where idiots try to ruin your evening." Jasmine laughed, surprised by how comfortable she felt with this dangerous stranger. "I'm a software developer. I work from home mostly, designing accessibility applications for people with disabilities. It's not glamorous, but it feels meaningful." She hesitated, then added, "I used to be a dancer before the accident." "Ballet." "I was with the American Ballet Theater." The admission hung between them, heavy with loss and dreams deferred. "Was?" Jae-sung asked gently. "Not anymore?" Jasmine's hand went unconsciously to her legs. Hard to dance when you can't feel anything below your waist, but even as she said it, there was something in Jae-sung's expression that made her add, "I still choreograph sometimes. In my head. I watch videos of performances and imagine new interpretations, new movements." "It's probably silly." "It's not silly," he said firmly. "Creation doesn't stop because our circumstances change. It just finds new expressions." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I used to paint. Before I took over the family business. Haven't touched a brush in 10 years, but I still see compositions everywhere I look. The way light falls, the way shadows create depth. We don't stop being artists just because we stop making art." The orchestra began playing a slow waltz, and couples moved onto the dance floor. Jasmine watched them with a mixture of longing and resignation. She'd loved dancing at events like this, had loved the way movement could tell stories without words. "Would you like to dance?" Jae-sung asked suddenly. Jasmine looked at him in surprise, gesturing to her wheelchair. "I appreciate the gesture, but I can't. Can't is a word other people use to limit us," he interrupted gently. "The question is whether you want to." He stood and moved behind her wheelchair, leaning down so his voice was close to her ear. "Trust me?" There was something in his tone that made her heart race. Against every instinct that told her to stay safe, to stay invisible, she nodded. Jae-sung wheeled her onto the dance floor, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed them. Once they were in the center, he moved to face her, then did something unexpected. He knelt, bringing himself to her eye level, and took her hands in his. "We'll make our own dance," he said softly. And they did. He moved her wheelchair in gentle circles, his hands guiding hers through the air in graceful arcs that followed the music. It wasn't traditional, wasn't what anyone expected, but it was beautiful in its own way. Jasmine found herself laughing, really laughing, as they created something new together. Other dancers gave them space, and she realized that some were even smiling, appreciating the unconventional beauty of their movement. "You're causing quite a scene, Mr. Park," she said as he spun her chair in a slow circle. "Good," he replied with a grin that made him look years younger. This place could use more real moments and fewer performed ones. As the music ended, applause broke out across the ballroom. Not the polite, obligatory applause of society events, but genuine appreciation. Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes, but these were different from earlier. These were tears of joy. Jasmine and Jae-sung returned to their table, the applause still echoing in the air. A feeling of lightness settled over Jasmine, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. The earlier humiliation at Marcus Chen's hands now felt distant, overshadowed by the unexpected joy of their dance. People approached their table now, but their expressions were different. No longer were they filled with pity or judgment, but with curiosity and admiration. A woman in a sparkling gown, who had earlier averted her gaze during Marcus's tirade, now came over with a genuine smile. "Ms. Williams, that was truly beautiful. I've never seen anything quite like it." Jasmine, still slightly breathless, managed a small smile. "Thank you," Jae-sung, ever the protector, nodded politely to the well-wisher, his gaze conveying a clear boundary. He turned back to Jasmine.
"See?
I told you. People just need a little nudge to remember what truly matters." He picked up his champagne glass again, swirling the amber liquid. My grandmother often said that true strength isn't about how much power you wield, but about how you choose to use it. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand up for someone who can't. He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. Or, in this case, dance with them. Jasmine felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about Marcus Chin anymore, or even about her own humiliation. It was about the unexpected connection she'd found, the quiet understanding that transcended their vastly different worlds. She looked at Jae-sung, truly seeing him for the first time, not just the powerful, enigmatic figure, but the man who remembered his grandmother's wisdom and chose to act on it. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a remarkable woman," Jasmine said softly. "She passed on a lot of wisdom, she was," Jae-sung confirmed, a hint of tenderness in his voice. "And she taught me that honor isn't about glory or reputation, but about integrity, about doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient or dangerous." As the gala wound down, the energy in the ballroom began to shift from vibrant to winding down, like a beautiful song fading to its final notes. Jae-sung remained by Jasmine's side, engaging her in conversation that flowed easily, touching on everything from art and music to the complexities of human nature. He spoke of his family's history, the sacrifices and the burdens, in a way that revealed a depth she hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a man shaped by immense responsibility and a complicated legacy. "It's not all glamorous, he admitted, his gaze drifting over the remaining guests. "The power comes with a heavy price. Constant vigilance, a never-ending chess game against rivals, against the law, sometimes even against those closest to you." Jasmine listened intently, sensing the underlying weariness beneath his composed exterior. "It sounds isolating," she offered. "It can be," he conceded, meeting her eyes. "Which is why moments like tonight are appreciated. A reminder that there are still genuine connections to be made, even in this world of masks and pretenses." He then turned the conversation back to her, asking about her work, her hopes for the future, her memories of dancing. He listened with an attentiveness that made her feel truly seen, truly heard, something rare in her life since the accident. She found herself sharing details she hadn't spoken about in years, the exhilaration of being on stage, the discipline of ballet, the crushing despair after her injury. "I still miss it every single day," she confessed, a bittersweet ache in her voice. "But I've learned to find beauty in other forms. In the code I write, in the stories people share about how my apps help them. It's a different kind of choreography, I suppose." Jae-sung nodded, his expression thoughtful. "A different stage, but the artistry remains." The evening deepened, and a comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated by the soft strains of the orchestra. It was a silence filled with unspoken understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the unexpected bond forged in the crucible of public humiliation and unexpected heroism. Eventually, the time came for guests to depart. Jae-sung discreetly signaled one of his men, a tall, imposing figure who immediately came forward. "Ms. Williams, if you'll allow me, I'll ensure you get home safely," Jae-sung offered, standing beside her wheelchair. Jasmine felt a pang of reluctance. She didn't want the evening to end, didn't want to break this fragile, beautiful bubble of connection. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Park, but I have a car service waiting." "Nonsense," he said, a gentle firmness in his voice. "Consider it a continuation of the evening's themes. I wouldn't feel right letting you navigate the city alone after what happened. Besides," he added with a mischievous glint in his eyes, "I'm curious to hear more about your accessibility apps. Perhaps there's a way my legitimate businesses could support such an endeavor." Jasmine smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "I'd like that very much." As they made their way to the exit, Jae-sung walking beside her wheelchair, Jasmine felt the lingering stares of the other guests. But this time, they weren't stares of pity or judgment. They were stares of curiosity, of wonder, of a silent question about the nature of their unlikely pairing. She held her head high, a newfound confidence radiating from her. The man who had once been an invisible charity case now moved with an undeniable presence, escorted by a man whose power was as undeniable as his integrity. Outside, a sleek black sedan, far more luxurious than her usual car service, awaited. The door was opened by another of Jae-sung's men, who assisted her with practiced ease. Before she entered the car, Jasmine turned to Jae-sung. "Thank you, Jae-sung," she said, using his first name for the first time. "For everything. You truly saved my evening." Jae-sung met her gaze, his dark eyes holding a depth that seemed to see right into her soul. "The pleasure was all mine, Jasmine," he replied, using her first name as well. "It's not often I encounter such resilience and grace. You reminded me that true strength isn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet, persistent, and incredibly powerful." He reached out, his hand gently touching her shoulder for a brief moment, a fleeting connection that sent a shiver down her spine. "Get home safely. And I look forward to hearing more about your work." As the car pulled away, Jasmine looked back through the tinted window. Jae-sung stood on the steps of the Grand Metropolitan, a solitary, imposing figure, yet somehow, in her mind, he now seemed less like a mafia boss and more like a guardian, a quiet hero who had stepped out of the shadows when she needed him most. The city lights blurred as the car sped through the streets, but Jasmine's mind was clear. She thought about the evening's events, the stark contrast between Marcus Chen's petty cruelty and Jae-sung's quiet strength. She thought about the dance, the unexpected freedom and joy she had found in movement once again, even if it was unconventional. And she thought about the future, about the possibilities that had opened up, not just for her apps, but for her own sense of self. The shame and fear that had once clung to her like a shroud had been replaced by a burgeoning sense of empowerment. She wasn't just a woman in a wheelchair. She was Jasmine Williams, a software developer, a former dancer, a woman with grace and resilience, and someone who had just found an unexpected ally in a world she thought she understood. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of the gala and of Jae-sung lingered with Jasmine. True to his word, he contacted her. Not through formal channels, but with a simple, direct message asking to meet and discuss her work. Their subsequent meetings were always discreet, often in quiet cafes or Jae-sung's private office, a minimalist space high above the city that offered panoramic views. He wasn't just making a token gesture, he was genuinely interested, asking insightful questions about the technology, the market, and the impact her applications had on people's lives. He saw the potential, not just for profit, but for genuine good, and he offered resources and connections that opened doors Jasmine had never even dreamed of. With his backing, her accessibility apps gained widespread attention, reaching a much larger audience and making a tangible difference in the lives of countless individuals with disabilities. She found her voice, not just as a developer, but as an advocate, speaking at conferences and sharing her story, no longer hiding in the shadows. And through it all, Jae-sung remained a constant, quiet presence. Their relationship was unconventional, a blend of professional collaboration, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding that transcended typical labels. He never tried to control her, only to empower her, to ensure her vision could flourish. He saw her strength, not her limitations, and in doing so, he helped her to see it too. The story of the shy girl and the Korean mafia boss became a quiet legend in certain circles, a testament to the unexpected places where courage and kindness could be found. It was a story about seeing beyond appearances, about the quiet dignity of those often overlooked, and about the profound impact one person's willingness to stand up can have on another's life. Jasmine's life was irrevocably changed, not just by the success of her work, but by the rediscovery of her own power. She learned that vulnerability was not weakness, and that true strength often lay in embracing who you are, wheelchair and all. She learned that allies could come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most dangerous people were also the most honorable. And Jae-sung, in turn, found a different kind of purpose beyond the intricate web of his family's empire. He found a connection that reminded him of his grandmother's wisdom, a way to use his power to build something truly good, truly honorable. He saw Jasmine flourish, her spirit unfurling like a vibrant flag, and recognized the quiet courage that had been there all along, just waiting for someone to see it. Their journey was a reminder that even in a world riddled with cruelty and judgment, there are still those who choose integrity, those who choose to stand for something more, for honor before glory. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? When faced with injustice, when you see someone pushed to the brink, what would you choose? Would you turn away, or would you find the courage to stand up for those who can't?